The gospel reading today, the gospel reading is actually a New Testament reading today. It's from Galatians 5, verses 22 through 26. In the Pew Bible, you can find it in the New Testament section, page 191. By contrast, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, generosity, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against such things. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. If we live by the Spirit, let us also be guided by the Spirit. Let us not become conceited, competing against one another, envying one another. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God.
On this Sunday after the day of Pentecost, we are going to talk a little bit, right? Because we have just seen that this big event, the Spirit has come over the disciples. And so sometimes when we think about the new church, we often think about big events, right? Like the Pentecost, the Spirit coming, and it's this large gathering, and so many things are happening. But as you go into the New Testament, and especially in Paul's writings, you get into a lot of the nitty-gritty of what church looks like. Because we all know being a church, not just way back then, as is now, was, yes, the Spirit has come, the Pentecost, we have receiving the Holy Spirit. But church and the hard work of being the church in this world is no easy thing. And we see that reflected in the community of Galatians. And being a YAV community, as Jay and Olivia can tell you, and living in intentional Christian community as well is not an easy thing. I'm not going to get into the details of that because that will be their job today to tell you more about that. But before I go even farther, I do want to briefly explain the YAV program for those of you who have never heard about the Young Adult Volunteer Program. And if I start using acronyms, I'm sorry, I've now been into the Presbyterian Church for a little bit too long. But the YAV program stands for Young Adult Volunteer Program. And it is an invitation to young adults to do a year of service for a year. And our slogan, and I always like this because it's one of the best slogans, the slogan is, a year of service for a lifetime of change. And I like to say in the Young Adult Volunteer Program, we get to have this amazing job of accompanying young adults in the Presbyterian Church, and young adults who come outside of the Presbyterian Church, and from many different places. The program is a binational program from Mexico, from the U.S., and we have many other young adults who come from many other places, and we get to accompany these young adults as they do a year of service, and their lives are changed by this year of service. And part of one of those things that the YAVs are reflecting on, and that really, I think, impacts our lives, is the community they participate. That community on a daily on a daily basis, it's their intentional community that Olivia and Jay share with their roommates from the Mexican side, Axel, Jesus, and Paulina. And they are living in community, which means actually in the same house too, right? And figuring out life together. And what does it mean to this whole thing of what it is to follow Christ, or to follow their callings, or what is God calling them together to be, and as individuals. And this idea of intentional Christian community, informing community, has always been one of the essentials of that Jesus taught us. That as Christians, what it means to be a Christian means we come together to form community. But this, as the church began to spread outside of the region of Israel and Palestine, it kind of started to take on a new meaning. Because not only was this church then in one single Jewish culture, but it began, as it moved outside of borders, it began to transform into a multicultural, diverse, and the communities that were forming this had people, like in the community of Galatians, from very many different cultural, ethnic communities. And for Paul, when he's talking about what's going on often in his letters, he's addressing these communities where borders, where different cultures, and to say where even different religions are represented. Because at this time, the idea that we're very early in the church, like the identity that we might have today as Presbyterians or Christians, they might have very different identities. People would still identify as being Jewish, or maybe people would identify with a different religion, as there were many religions. But Paul, as himself, very much identifies as a Jewish person. And so, as the church expands, right, and it goes into different cultures and is now in this diverse setting outside of Palestine and Israel, certain conflicts arise. And certain ideas of what the church should look like, and, what religion and what traditions are most important in the church. And so Paul is trying to help the church focus on what is most important. What does it really mean to be the church? Right? And so Paul describes that the markers of the church are not our religious traditions, our own personal cultures, but the markers of what a church should be are the fruits of the Spirit. Because what was happening in the church is that certain traditions or certain religions, and not to say any of those are bad, but then they were becoming things that were dividing the church. They were becoming things that were creating privileges in the church. And like us today, it's not to say any of our identities as a citizen of the United States or citizens of other cultures or other countries, or to have certain cultures. None of those are bad things, but they're not the markers of when we think about what makes a church. The markers of what makes a church, as Paul says, and what it means to be a church are the fruits of the Spirit. That is what we identify ourselves first as Christians. And to the point where Paul even says, I'm going to de-emphasize my own religion and my own culture because to make sure that I focus on first and that I define our community first on the fruits of the Spirit. And more importantly, Paul says, and Paul is founding churches where this is prevalent, right? Where places of cultures are meeting, where there are borders, all those things. Paul specifically is going to those places and founding churches that are founded on the fruits of the Spirit. And how are these churches getting through all the chaos of being different, of having different cultures, of being citizens of different places? They're focusing on trying to live out the fruits of the Spirit together. And that is what we in the Borderlands Young Adult Volunteer Program are trying to do with young adults. It is a binational program on the U.S.-Mexico border, a place we know that has very different differences between different cultures, Mexico and the U.S., where different languages are spoken, where people are citizens of different cultures, and we are saying, together we want to form community together, because that is the mission of the church. And so I am now going to invite our YAVs to share about some of the fruits of the Spirit that they have seen in their YAV experience on the border.
Good morning. My name is Jay. I'm originally from right outside Raleigh, North Carolina. And first off, I'd like to say that this is our last church visit of our YAV year. And we are very thankful that we're ending here at Trinity because it's kind of where we started. We've even slept in your church before. I don't know if you guys know that. But it's definitely a special community, and we're very thankful to wrap it up here. I didn't come into the YAV program knowing what the fruits of the Spirit were. And if you would have told me that I'd be standing in a pulpit speaking on this in August, I would have not believed you. I did not grow up Presbyterian. I grew up Church of Christ. And for those that know that, it's way different. But I didn't have any desire to find God. It wasn't that I was against it. It was just a lack of motivation and real want. I came into this YAV program because during college I was able to take a class called the Border Immersion, and we learned about immigration, migration, all for a semester, and then we actually went down to Douglas and Agua Prieta, where I met James, where I met Mark Adams, and I fell in love with that community. And then it came time for me to figure out what I was doing after college. And I was like, I'm gonna go to grad school. That seems like the right option. And then I got waitlisted from grad school. And I was like, what do I do now? And decided to apply to be a YAV. And I was like, if I don't do it now, I don't think I ever would again. And this is the perfect time. And so I applied, I got in, and I was like, okay, I'm going to Mexico. And then I got into grad school. And I was like, oh no. So it was a debate of, a normal path, after college, after a bachelor's degree, go get your master's maybe, and then go get in the job. And I was like, well, yeah, I don't think I would ever go back if I, didn't take this opportunity now. So I deferred from grad school and said yes to coming here. I still would not have believed you I'd be standing here, After growing up Church of Christ, like having a church that's welcoming to have like women stand in a pulpit and speak. I would have never thought that I'd be here, and never thought that it would be, I don't know, as like comfortable as it is. And so the fruits of the Spirit that I want to focus on speaking about today is patience, and not in the way of how I thought about it before. And oh yeah, I'm patient with people. I'm patient with things. I give time. I thought I was patient, but this year has like changed the perspective on other ways like patience comes into people's lives. I went and moved to Mexico without speaking Spanish. I took 4 years of French, so I had nothing. And then, like James says, we live with 3 other YAVs that are born and raised in Mexico, and some of them don't fully speak English, so that was a whole okay. And then first week in Mexico, Mark Adams asked me, so do you want to teach English? Yeah, okay. I speak English, why can't I teach it, It's a lot harder than you think it is. But I have a great group of women that I teach. I teach at a women's co-op where they are very eager to learn about, they want to know. And even though when I first got there, I had everything translated for myself. So this is the directions translated, and it was a long process, but they showed me patience that I hadn't seen before. And the way of they were patient with me to know that like one day I would be able to have a conversation with them, that it's okay for right now that we're only doing class and I'm only asking them how they are because that's all I know. But they were patient in the way of, giving me time to figure out where I was, walking alongside of me quietly, but I was being accompanied. And the moment that changed my, the biggest moment from the women, teaching women, was their biggest thing is they wanted to be able to speak English to the delegations that come and buy their, sewing and crafts. And when they first did the first presentation in English, their smiles, their, joy, and I was like, wow, I helped them get there. Even though we might not, I don't really know a lot about their deep personal life because we just can't get there yet, but I was able to help them and get there, and they were also able to help me get here. And then that was probably my second month in Mexico, I feel. It's still very early. I still had no idea what I was doing in Mexico. But I started having a space where I could think about finding God again. That's another thing that is amazing about the YAV program is it is intentional time to figure your life out in a way, as a young adult. And we, James will, one day a week, we'll have a meeting with James of some sort. And it's usually a time of being an intentional time to be where have you seen God in your life this week? Well, before this year, I'd never really thought about that, But having such a community that accepts all things as seeing God, the smallest thing and being no, there you go. It's not having to be this perfectly constructed answer of what people should say when talking about God. It's just a casual and understanding of we're all figuring it out still. And that also gave me a different sort of patience within myself, that just because I didn't, have the greatest relationship with the Christian faith, I would say, doesn't mean that was God. And just because I thought I knew God, I don't think I ever really did, because I've seen how God can move through communities at the border and connect communities on, with a big ugly fence in between it, and how people are committed to not just pushing their religion on you in no way, but showing their religion when loving you. And I think that's a very beautiful thing that I've also gotten to become patient with myself, that when I first got here, I didn't know what a doxology was. I now can do it, I can now hit the Lord's Prayer without any looking at the paper. And like I said, if you would have told me in August that I'd be standing here this confident talking about how I found God, you know, I would have laughed, you know, because I didn't come to the Borderlands to see Jesus, you know. It wasn't, I did because I wanted to, and now I can see that that was my original path the whole entire time. And just because I didn't know what I was looking at doesn't mean that that path wasn't already set. So this year has definitely shown me a lot of patience. The community has shown me a lot of patience. I've had to be very patient with myself. It's very hard to learn Spanish. And yeah, I think we have a really great community of YAVs as well, that we're very close. We all love each other. Like, oh God, they're so awesome. But yeah, I think the biggest thing is that through everything, this community, you guys as well, has been patient with us even though when we first got here, we really had no idea anything we would experience. It was just like that accompaniment, that support, that just like overall love, that like, it's okay, we'll figure it out and we'll just be there. So, thank you.
Morning, church. My name is Olivia, and I'm originally from North Carolina as well. And before my YAV year, I wasn't really sure what I was doing post-grad and where God should be calling me next. And so the YAV program really is a perfect opportunity for young adults of faith just to have the space and time to really see where they're being called to next. And so before my year, I worked with children. And so then when I committed to the YAV year and learned that I could work with Frontera de Cristo's Children's Enrichment Ministries, that really was the perfect opportunity for me. And then also, I was asked with the question, would you like to teach English? Or teach English. No, I don't speak any Spanish, but sure. And really the first little while of when I knew no Spanish, it was just how can I show up each day and be present for these kids and listen to these kids even if I don't understand what they're telling me, and just try and show them love. And the love that they have shown me in return is more than I could have ever imagined at the beginning of the year. Another thing with the fruits of the Spirit that I think about with the children is joy. I think every day when I walk into one of the centers and I'm greeted with, teacher, ¿cómo estás? And they start going on with whatever their day was about, what happened at school, the drama going on. They just beam it. And then it comes time and I say, sit down for class and let's start learning. And they're less joyful, but they still show me that kindness and goodness and patience and love. And there's one time we went on a field trip to one of the ranches out in the area, and that was an afternoon where we could just be outside, play football or soccer and hopscotch, jump rope, and just experience God's creation with the beloved of children of God. And the laughter and cheers of the afternoon, probably cheering because they didn't have to have class, but also because we were together and we were just in that space of love and peace and kindness and joy. And so when I leave this year and think about the memories I'm going to hold on to, the biggest lessons that I've learned and stuff, it's definitely from the children in Agua Prieta with Frontera de Cristo's Children's Enrichment Ministry that I've been so fortunate to love the last year and feel their love back. Amen.